Hey guys, Rudy here. I don't even know where to start. Life is I'm gonna start by saying this. Life is crazy. Like, and I'm not talking about, you can forget all the crap about Mandela effect, synchronicities, retrocausal events, the gematria, the numbers. Forget all that for a second. And when I say life is crazy, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the spiritual side is absolutely bananas. And I don't even know where to start. It's so simple, yet it's so complicated at the same time. I don't know if y'all ever heard, for anybody who's not a Christian, they have this stupid little saying. It goes something along the lines of, "What's the good word?" or "Do you know what the good word is?" And I think I figured it out. And I've had these intubations for for a couple of months now on what the good news is. And I've always thought about, what does that dumb phrase mean? And I think I figured it out. I wasn't expecting to talk about this, but I am. And I think it's this idea that, at least from what I figured, that everybody is going through the same crap. Therefore, y'all have heard me say that. I say everybody's going through the exact same thing. It doesn't matter what your race is, what your color is, what country you're from. You could be living in a jungle, yada yada, raised by wolves. We're all going through the same spiritual issues. And when you stretch that out a tiny bit, you come to the conclusion we all have the same solutions. It's the same solution. If we all have the same problem, it's the same solution. That's the good news. To me, that's the absolute best news ever. And I see it every day. I see it in people. I have these discussions with my coworker Karina, and she understands it. And we see it like we see the bullshit of the separation, where everybody seems to think that their tiny little world is unique. They're they're a beautiful little snowflake. They think their problems are special and unique. They think their familiar problems are special and unique. And it's not. They're not. And I'm going to say this definitively. They are not. They are not the same. Every time I tell my story about my mother and father, I'm telling it because I'm not telling it just because I want to tell it. I'm telling it because I want everyone else who's listening to reflect on themselves and realize that they went through the same shit I did. It may not be with a mother and father. Let's say they're adopted, for instance. Okay, they're adopted. It's with some adult in your life. And it doesn't even have to be that. It could be somebody your own age. Whoever traumatized you, I've been over this before. Whoever traumatized you, that's what you're bound to. That's the spirit that clings onto you for the rest of your life until you forgive them. And it's not weakness. I'm repeating myself. It's not weakness to forgive. It's it's for your own good. It's not for them at all. Like, let's say, for instance, you go to the person who traumatized you. Let's say, I don't know if I want to get too serious. I need a good example. Let's say, for instance, a cousin. Let's say an older cousin, maybe 2, 3 years older. Let's say you were 10, they were 14. They took you to a bad side of town. Something bad happened. Let's say they got into a fight. You got really hurt. You broke your arm or something like that. I'm just making a dumb example. But that's the one thing, and on the outside looking, it doesn't seem that serious. But to you, for instance, the person who got their arm broken, let's say it was very traumatic for you because what was said and what was done, and being in the situation as a 10-year-old made it all too traumatic through the eyes of a 10-year-old, right? That doesn't understand maybe what's going on. So that trauma has forever clung to your spirit until you forgive that person. And then say you're a 30-year-old and they're 34, 35. Y'all might as well be the same age at that point, because when you're 10 and they're 14, that's a child versus a teenager. But when you're 30 and 34, you're both adults. You're grown-ass people by that point at the same time. Like, the age doesn't matter at that point. You get what I'm saying? Check if I'm still recording. Yes, I am. So, for instance, if you go and forgive your cousin, let's say I tell you something, you tell me about the story, I'm like, well, and say you never spoke to your cousin again after that. and you tell me this traumatic story that happened to you. Maybe you're mad at him, you're mad at your mom, you're mad at everyone for letting you hang out with him or something like that. Like I said, this is just an example. And I tell you, well, why don't you go to your cousin and ask him what happened? And you're getting all into your feelings about it. You're getting angry. It's like, why do I have to talk to him? He's a piece of shit. He put me through this thing when I was 10. And I say something along the lines of, well, you're both grown adults now. You're practically the same age by this point. Like between 30 and 34, that's nothing, right? But 10 to, like we've been over this, 10 to 14, that's a big difference. And I'm like, well, you're a grown person by this point. You should treat the situation as a grown-up if it's still bothering you that much. And you're mad at me now because I put that into your head. And it's like a virus at that point. And I do this to people where I get them to think about themselves, reflect on the situation a little better, with clear from the perspective of someone who's on the outside, looking in, and saying, you need to go to that person and talk to them about it. And you might find out the situation may have been different than what you thought it was. You were just seeing it through the eyes of a child who may not be all that mature mentally, but spiritually, you're traumatized spiritually, unfortunately. So let's say you stew on it for like a couple of days, a week, 2 weeks go by. You're not talking to me. You're mad at me now. And finally, it's nagging. It's like a mustard seed that wants to sprout into a giant mustard bush or whatever they are. And finally, you're like, screw it. I'm gonna call him up. He lives in another state, so I'm gonna call him up. And hey, what's up? Hey, Miguel. You remember that time we were in the alley and I got my arm broken? And let's say for instance, from his point of view, it was something funny or something fun, or maybe they weren't even fighting. Like he tells you something along the lines of, I was like, oh yeah, we were just kind of horsing around and you got pushed to the side, you broke your arm, and it was an accident. I remember feeling really bad about it, but it wasn't that big of a deal. And you're like, are you serious? Like, I thought y'all were fighting and you took me to an alley to get into a fight. And you're like, no, it wasn't anything like that. But and then you say, and you have that mustard seed in your mind still about forgiveness. And you're like, oh man, let's say you tell your cousin, like, I've been mad at you this whole time about it, and it turns out I just had a misunderstanding. And then you have a realization you're wrong for hating him at that point, right? You're wrong. You're then the wrong for resenting. But you're still bound by that anger, that hatred, and that resentment. And once you have that realization, you forgive him. And suddenly you're released. And there's no weakness in that. That's why I'm using this example. I'm just coming up with this example on the fly. I didn't know I was going here. But you forgive him. And you realize for yourself that you were wrong for resenting him. Because the situation was playing out in your head for almost 30 years, 20 years. And it wasn't even what happened what happened. And let's say, for instance, maybe the cousin's lying about it. Does it matter at that point? It really doesn't. What's the most important thing is that having that realization that you were wrong for resenting. It's for your soul is at stake. Your spirit is at stake. And every single person on the world is going through that. Everybody is trauma bound. These little bitty traumas. Even if they are bigger traumas, like getting molested by an uncle or something, that's a little more serious. I understand that, but it's the same thing. This is what I mean. Like, same problem, same solution. That's the good word. And these dumb little preachers who say these words and they don't understand it. And I don't know every single preacher on the planet, but 80%, 90% don't know what the fuck that means. And that's the good news to me. The good news is, same solution when everyone has the same problem. It's simple. Life is simple. Simple, I'm telling you. Super simple. It's so simple it'll make your head spin. If you do these things that I talk about on my channel, you go and forgive the person that traumatized you, you're going to see it for yourself. You're going to realize how retarded everyone is. Everybody is retarded. Uncanny Deduction said it best, like, we're all a bunch of dumb apes. He didn't say that, but he said that we're all retarded. And yeah, he's right. On the money. Uncanny Deduction is on the money. We're all retarded. We don't know anything about anything. We're just a bunch of apes floating through space, if you want to believe that. Anyway, guys, I think that's all I wanted to say. I didn't expect this audio recording to go in that direction. I just got through having a conversation with my coworker Karina, and we got into something super deep about how everybody's going through the same thing, and it got me thinking, like, wow, life is so easy, but at the same time, though, like, life is so weird, it's so bizarre. I'm not even talking about the Mandela effect stuff or the retrocausal stuff or anything like that. Just living itself is strange, but it's fascinating. It's like fun to me now. Like, I love life now. It's so funny. It's meant to be stupid. And I believe that for a damn fact. Y'all have a good day, guys. Thank you for joining me.